So with Dawn of the Hunt being out almost about a week now, we've seen some changes. It looks like there's another list of changes here coming up. It was pretty negatively received, new league launch, and because of that, they've been kind of rushing out statements constantly. And then we got Zizran's interview yesterday, which if you haven't seen it, highly recommend watching that one. That was a spicy one because I had a lot of spirited, passionate debate from both sides of the interview there. So, and that looks like it actually resulted in some pretty positive changes as well. So props for that one. If you go through here and take a look at these actual changes, we're going to do that now and kind of break down what's going on. I haven't had a chance to look at these, so we're going to get kind of my live reaction here. Today, we're continuing to work on changes based upon player feedback, and this is a list of updates that we have finished internally. We'll be deploying the following changes over the next few days. So this is coming soon. This is just a list of changes that we have been made so far. These are not the only changes we are investigating, and they do not represent a full list of what players are reporting to us. This is just what they've actively been working on currently. So player balance changes. Now that they have nerfs out of the way, we can concentrate on buffing things that are not performing well. So it looks like they are listing Arc, which is doing a lightning explosion, but no longer shocks and doesn't consume a shock. So a little bit better, maybe AoE there. Eye of Winter now gains bonus elemental damage from passing through other elemental orbs like Solar Orb, Orbis Storms, or Frost Bomb. So they're trying to, make it a little bit more of a combo. Eye of Winter before was basically just used because of its critical weakness, but that has since been removed. Incinerate's exposure duration has been increased to 8 seconds from 2, quite a bit of a buff there. Mana Tempest can now be used with all spells and has been changed to cause empowered spells to split to additional targets instead of chaining or forking. You have Frostboat's explosion radius has been increased by 50%. Ice Nova's freeze buildup has been increased significantly. Frostbomb's exposure duration has been increased to 8 seconds from 5. Mana Remnants has been changed to work with other elemental elements than just shock. And they're lowering the delay for ignites spreading from the sources such as Wildwood support to 1 second from 2 seconds, but the radius has been decreased slightly. So we just have some buffs to some underperforming or underutilized types of abilities here. Now, Bleed Chaos Inoculation. Okay, so this has been one that I think was originally brought up by Quinn, which is that you can't actually bleed on Energy Shield, making bleed builds worse anytime you run into an Energy Shield mob. So Energy Shield no longer prevents bleeding from being applied. Solved. But then because Chaos Inoculation exists where you have 1 HP, you just immediately die of the bleed. So Chaos Inoculation now prevents bleeding. And the passive cluster that grants you additional stun threshold based on your maximum energy shield now also increases your element threshold, so you no longer need to be ignited, shield, frozen, shocked as often while using CI if you take these passives. So a little bit of a buff there as well. So that will solve the bleed issue and make bleed builds better. Now, Huntress has been reported to feel sort of underwhelming early, so it looks like they're doing some changes here. Parried enemies can no longer evade your attacks. There you go. Spear stuck in enemies by Rapid Assault. That's like the multiple 5-hitter. Now, always bleed on hit when you detonate it. The AoE has been increased by 20%, and the detonate does 67% more damage. So we're seeing quite a bit of a buff there. The spear field spear duration has been increased from 10 seconds from 6, and its damage growth increased, dealing 30% more damage by level 20. And Herald of Blood no longer deletes the corpses of rares or unique, allowing you to use Ritual Sacrifice on the rare. So kind of minor changes here, but Rapid Assault's getting a pretty decent buff there. And then because of you haven't used parry quite often, generate frantic charges and do more damage. Now they can't evade when you're doing that follow-up attack. So warrior-specific changes, that's what I'm playing, so I'm curious to see what we get here. Temper Weapon, the Smith of Katava now adds 3 empowerments per strike and is 25% faster. So now, that's a 3x buff. The damage might need to come down a little. Hopefully not. Let's be overpowered. The shield wall is now detonatable with War Cries. Interesting, okay. Armor Break, now being applied to players by monsters, no longer has the 20% extra physical damage modifier that was intended only to be a buff for players. So this is actually quite nice. We've also reduced its duration to 4 seconds from 12 seconds. In addition, there was a bug where partial armor breaks were never removed on the player. So this isn't necessarily, I guess it's sort of a buff to armor. It's a buff to, or a nerf to the weakness of armor, if that makes sense, as opposed to armor itself just getting buffed. So this is, armor tends to be, a little bit weaker. I typically, when I'm playing Smith of Katava, I'm feeling fairly tanky, except physical and chaos damage are like the things like I'm kind of worried about for the most part, just because chaos res is a little low, but physical slams tend to be the thing that I'm weakest to the most. So this actually will help a bit with that. And armor break was definitely absolutely terrifying. And without the extra 20% physical damage modifier, I'm looking forward to not immediately getting slammed by a white mob for 80% of my HP. So then we have ranger-specific changes. Stormcaller arrow now proliferates shock to nearby enemies in a small radius and had its radius increased by 50%. Lightning rod damage increased by 30%. Duration increased to 20 seconds. Lightning arrow has had its radius in which arcs to its targets increased by 50%. Tornado shots maximum duration is now 15 seconds. So, again, these are some smaller changes, but, kind of buffs across the board here. New support gem. I have a support gem called Inhibitor that prevents charges being consumed but increases the damage of the supported skill by 4% for each type of charge you have. So if you have like 3 frenzy charges nonstop, I guess you're getting 12% increased. They use the word increase. I'm not sure it's more damage. Maybe it is more damage because 12% increase seems kind of low to me, but this is like a permanent damage increase. Update. We've since found that the implementation for the increased damage type per charge is not feasible in the time frame that we wanted the support gem to be released, and the core design of the support is an important tool, so we'll be releasing it without that stat present. Okay, so this is effectively makes it where you're not consuming your charges if you don't want to consume the charges, basically, is the reason they're putting this gem up, but you're not actually getting the increased damage at the moment. It looks like they'll have to change that later. Delirium changes. They last 2.5 times longer. So this is pretty much just easier to do your deliriums in your maps. Crafting. This is interesting. One of the first times I actually mentioned crafting in these notes here. Added several artificial orbs to fixed locations throughout the campaign, allowing you to craft with them more often. This is actually a complaint that I typically have going through the campaign as well. Like you don't have, I feel like, very many socketables, because when you get a piece of gear and you upgrade to the next gear, you lose all the sockets. And it's not so much the runes because they double the rune drop rate, but the sockets in particular can be kind of annoying as well. So you end up having to go to the vendor and buy the thing and then salvage. That's typically what I have to do, particularly in hardcore, because you kind of like have to have these defenses since we don't have the crafting bench. We've also added runes for attributes to allow you to fix early game requirement. Okay, so now we just have attribute runes as well. So straight up attribute. That'd be better for people that are just stacking stats, I suppose, if they're still doing a stat stacker type of build, even though stat stacker's been nerfed massively. We're also updating all runes to also apply to wands and staves. This will work with this work will require additional specific mods for these items, but we're unsure if soul cores and talismans will be added at the same time, but it's our intention to make this change. So now you can actually have sockets for this gear. I mean, before, the magic side of things, you literally couldn't socket your equipment. Like, you just only had quality. So they, it was a little bit underwhelming there, but it looks like we're actually getting the ability to do that, which is a pretty nice buff for those types of players. Finding rares in in-game. During the in-game is a common issue of missing rare on the corner map that you didn't happen to explore. In order to mitigate this issue, we have changed the rares to show up on the mini-map at all times. This is a nice change. I don't know why this wasn't just out of the gate, to be honest, because there was kind of Band-Aid fixes of checkpoints, which is like, it's nice to have new checkpoints, and I like that they drop a checkpoint at the end of the rare, but it is annoying to find these. So I'm glad this one is in the game, because without it, it would just be more annoying, honestly. And it's not like there's less work you have to do, and it makes, everything so much easier in terms of combat. It's just now less annoying. So that's actually a W change. The waterways here. So one of the longer areas in Act 3, we've made a change to the waterways to merge some sections of water together, reducing the average number of levers that you will encounter while playing by 6 levers. If they're reducing it on average by 6 levers, I don't even want to know how many levers total there were. I feel like 6 levers is like almost all of them, but maybe I'm mistaken here. I mean, reducing it by 6 levers is literally insane. So it's probably, at least half. That should be significantly faster. Monster speed. They're actually addressing monster speed. Here we go. One of the issues that's often reported by getting swarmed by monsters. We are currently doing a pass to investigate this issue and can probably talk about specific changes tomorrow. But the changes are likely to be targeted at specific monsters that are too difficult, especially in zones that have a lot of fast monsters. So this is the first time they're actually kind of doing an audit of speed. This has been brought up multiple times, but they're finally doing it. This was a discussion that happened during Zizran's interview as well, so they probably got the push they needed in order to actually look at these. A note about the ritual exploit. Recently, there was an exploit involving reducing the deferral cost of ritual items. Yeah, okay, so this was This was a weird scenario in which like someone over there basically didn't do the math. And if you put in like all of the ritual tablets, you can literally have things reroll for free, and you can reroll it infinitely because of a unique tablet. And when you defer and reroll, lowers the price of it. So like basically what would happen is you would go into a ritual, you would find an item you want, click, defer, reroll, find another item you want, click, defer, reroll. And by the end of it, you have like, 3, billion, million items that are all like insane. Like, you could have any currency item could show up there. I think that I saw a screenshot that MP posted, people literally getting mirrors, divine orbs. You can get like multiple audience for kings. So I think there was like thousands of audience for kings that flood the market literally immediately with this. So it looks like they actually decided to ban people for this. So 301 accounts that were clearly exploiting this and will remain banned until the end of the current league. So they're actually getting unbanned at the end of the league. Probably it would have probably been a permaban if this was like some kind of like glitch exploit, but this is one of those what would be a Blizzard terminology, like a clever use of game mechanics types of exploits, which is like it's obviously you know what you're doing, but at the same time like they didn't exactly hack the game. Thankfully the economic impact outside of the banned accounts is relatively small. So and they also mentioned in the previous one of these notes here that they were actually going to remove the wealth that was generated effectively out of the economy for this as well. And that's all the changes they finished today. Changes will be delayed over the next few days, but we should have more reports tomorrow. So this is just the reports for the day. So these are actually addressing, at least mentioning a lot of the very common complaints. And it looks like we're getting some movement on them. Also, a little bit of some changes, like in particular the temper weapon and some of the cadavers. Like, yeah, this was we asked this question too. It's like, well, what is the point of the temper being so incredibly slow? I watched Quinn seeing their hammer on the temper on the live stream. It was like temper directly into the face of a boss was absolutely hilarious. So. Yeah, that looks like that is the changes. There's some good ones in here. There's some more things still to come, but it looks like these are just the changes for today. On the end of this, I'll just say that I know it's been, the launch of it has been, pretty negative, to be honest. A lot of people did not like the changes that were made in this league, and it looks like they kind of are slowly getting this message and starting to make changes. This is the 5th day into the league at this point. So, we'll see where the game ends up in a couple weeks. If you haven't got to the end game yet, I want to say one positive note, which is like the end game is significantly improved at the moment. I was thinking about making a video just talking about this because I'm like level 84, 85%. I'm still haven't died in, HCSSF, and I'm really starting to enjoy the game now that I'm in the end game portion of it because of a lot of the changes they made there. So I'll probably do a breakdown kind of showing a lot of those different changes because I'm actually quite enjoying it as well. Like to give you an idea, they're talking about like changing the maps and stuff in Act 3 because the Act 3 maps are annoying, but there was a lot of like in-game maps that were highly, highly annoying. Like I would use an example of like Crypt, where Crypt is like super small, has these tiny little hallways, you're constantly getting stuck on pillars, but they made it a lot more like Slick, where it's just like a giant hallway, much more linear, and it went from like a F- tier map to like an A+ tier map. Like it's significantly better improved. So I started to run into some of these changes where I was kind of realizing like, why, I'm surprised they didn't put these in patch notes, because there's a few things that were addressed which are legitimately a cause for concern for people before that they didn't put into the patch notes before the launch of the game. And you just like kind of surprised run into them, like adding a checkpoint when you kill the last rare, you get a checkpoint. So that way, if you kill all the rares first before you go to the boss, you can like kill that and immediately warp to the boss. So like there's a couple nice things they added, but I'll probably break that down in a separate video. But either way, looking like some pretty good changes, some positive stuff here. I'll be live now as I have a little bit of a surprise for you guys all today live. That's about it. Love you all. See you in the next video.